Soul Train VTR 12-273, take one.
Hi, I'm Don Cornelius, and what you're about to see is a very special program.
Soul Train wasn't just one of the longest-running shows ever. It was also the coolest.
Soul Train was the show.
It had the hippest conductor.
Big Don, the first intellectual funk master.
Hey there, and welcome aboard for an absolutely mind-blowing voyage of the Soul Train.
Who showed the world what to listen to.
The Jackson 5.
Shaka Khan. Stevie.
Marvin Gaye.
Soul Train was a breaking point for all of the black artists in the 70s.
Anytime I come to Soul Train, it's a gas, and I'm home.
What to wear.
Platforms, bell-bottoms, afros, big afros.
Nice wig you got on there, brother.
And most importantly, how to get down.
You want to get the latest dances, so you would watch Soul Train in the morning, and then at night they would have a party and everybody, come and be ready to lock it out,
From Sly to Snoop, dashikis to do-rags, locking to poppin', get on the line, cause this train's about to leave the station.
When the aliens come in about 2,000 years and they want to see what was going down in black life, they can watch all episodes of Soul Train. That's how we got down.
This is Soul Train, the hippest trip in America. You dig?
Been a long time coming, but tonight, change has come to America.
We're living in a time right now where we have an African-American president of the United States of America. We all have to flash back to a time when this was the most remote kind of dream.
I have a dream.
People couldn't use the hotel motel apart. From Texas across to Florida to Maryland, we couldn't use a single public toilet. It's humiliating.
The goal of the demonstrations in Selma is to dramatize the existence of injustice.
Yet somehow we turned that pain into power.
Born and bred on the south side of Chicago, Don Cornelius spent his early life immersed in the civil rights struggles of the 60s.
Growing up in Chicago, I was inspired by people like Jesse Jackson. He sort of came to town at the behest of Martin Luther King to start to organize.
Don was a news reporter, so Dr. King would have these rallies. Don would report, so Don was very connected to the civil rights movement.
Chicago at that time, there were riots going on. Martin Luther King even said that Chicago had a unique kind of racism.
That searing racism Don experienced in Chicago was reflected in what he was seeing on television.
The problem is that the Negro in this country today stands for venereal disease, prostitution, the numbers racket, and crime.
It was a medium that didn't feature minorities in a positive way, and it bothered me personally.
There were no black people in media. There were no nightly newscasters that were black. You really didn't have a national representation of black youth, except insofar as it was on the nightly news as urban unrest and protest. You only saw black youth narrated that way.
I had a burning desire to see black people presented on television in a positive light.
In 1968, Don landed a part-time hosting gig at WCIU, the only local TV station with programming that targeted Chicago's large black population.
I was thrown into a situation where they were making television shows, and I saw that as a potential opportunity because I felt I could do it.
Over the next couple of years, Don formulated an idea for his own TV show.
The principal inspiration for Soul Train was American Bandstand and Dick Clark. I wanted to do a black bandstand.
While American Bandstand was the most popular music and dance show of the 1960s, it gave little exposure to black artists.
It was just hard to get on shows like American Bandstand because they were mostly white-oriented.
I've completely forgotten who's next. Is it Gladys Phipps and the Knights?
After over a year of meetings, Don not only convinced his bosses at WCIU of the viability of a black American bandstand, he walked away with ownership.
I was fully open to them saying, sign here, and this belongs to us. I would have said, no problem. But they didn't say.
Overnight, Don had become one of the first African Americans to own a TV show. The premiere episode hit the Chicago airwaves on August 17, 1970.
Soul Train, the hippest trip in America. 60 non-stop minutes over the tracks of your mind into the exciting world of soul.
It had a very local look to it. We didn't have color cameras. Part of the reason why we don't have archival footage of the show we did on Channel 26 is because they never got taped.
But what it lacked in polish, it made up for in flavor.
When it came on, it was overnight hot. Almost in minutes, every black person in town knew about it. Not because it was such a wonderful show, but because it was theirs.
It was like, wow, look at this. It gave us something to look at, to see some diversity, and to see ourselves.
You did 3 things when you got out of school. You watched Soul Train, Speed Racer, and the Three Stooges. Not necessarily in that order.
Don booked many of Chicago's top acts on the show, including B.B. King, the Staple Singers, and Curtis Mayfield, along with rising stars from across the country, like the OJs.
First time we met him was the first time we did the show. He was struggling to get his foot in the door. We were still struggling, trying to be a hit act. And automatically that made us become comrades and friends.
But the real stars of Soul Train were the local teens that Don recruited to dance on the show.
Kids would get out of school and line up at the bottom of the Board of Trade building.
We would get on that long line, and you go in a small elevator, and I swear to God that the dance studio was no bigger than my living room. If you knew, they put you in the back. So anytime the camera would come on, I would do something really cool. And all of a sudden, they say, put that guy in the front. And I say, all right, we're in the front now.
Just move on up toward your destination.
We had these little ghetto kids who got a chance to just dance their hearts out. They were the stars of the show.
The combination of enthusiastic dancers and talented local artists made Don's show more than just a hit. It was a full-fledged revolution.
Everybody watched Soul Train. If you're a thug, hood, homeless, whatever, you watch Soul Train. One time, coming home from my girlfriend's house, she lived in the hood. And these guys, I saw them coming. I said, oh, okay, I'm about to get either beat up or robbed. And so these guys walked up and said, where you from? Where you from? West Side. West Side? You about to get your ass whooped. What you got? What you got? They start patting your pockets. They took all my money, took my gold chain. And then all of a sudden, one of these cats looked at me and said, wait, whoa. Check this guy. Oh, no, I know. It's that dancing man. I know him, man. No. He's on Soul Train. No. This guy can dance, man. No. Hold on. Cut a move. I did a split, James Brown split, came up smooth. He said, that's him. Yo, they gave me all my money back and gave me extra money because they said, yo, you want to take a cab because it's dangerous in the neighborhood.
But Don wasn't content to be a local sensation. He capitalized on his success as soon as possible.
It took less than a year before we had some serious backing to take it into a national show.
To take Soul Train to the next level, Don relocated to the world's entertainment capital.
Hollywood, that was mesmerizing to everybody. We got to get out to Hollywood.
The city of the stars, movies, women, and cars. I guess I'll start. Say, hey, hey, hey.
Soul Train coming to LA in the early 70s coincides with Motown coming to LA in the early 70s. And that's very important. It was a huge exodus of talent to LA following Motown because this was the new promised land. If Berry Gordy says this is where we should be, this is where we should be.
When it came to Los Angeles, that's kind of when it took off. You know, it became the hippest strip in America.
On October 2nd, 1971, Soul Train made its national debut. Gone was the claustrophobic feel of the old local show.
The Chicago set felt a little gloomy to me. Los Angeles was big. Los Angeles was bright. It was like night and day.
This was L.A., baby. The big time.
The hippest trip in America. 60 non-stop minutes across the tracks of your mind into the exciting world of soul.
Don had grand ambitions for the show. Unfortunately, selling those dreams into syndication was tougher than he anticipated. While the show initially premiered in just 7 cities, Don still stepped confidently into the national limelight for the very first time.
And now, here's your host, Don Cornelius.
Hi there and welcome aboard. You're right on time for a beautiful trip on the Soul Train. And now let's all get some hands together for 4 beautiful people who represent a mighty mountain of soul. The very gifted and talented Gladys Knight and the dancing, swinging, singing Hips.
Gladys Knight was the key to us getting a syndication deal because we had to have a major star.
While landing Gladys Knight was a coup, Don still struggled to book big-name talent on the show.
We didn't have the leverage to make anybody who was large do a new television show.
As a result, Don turned to the people who helped him to get where he was, old friends from his days in Chicago.
He'd find out what hotel we were at, and he'd literally come by early in the morning, knocking on the door, come out, I need you to come and do my show.
What they do, they smile in your face. All the time they want to take your place, but backstab us.
Don's hustling led to a string of appearances by mainstays of the old Chicago version of the show, like the Staple Singers, B.B. King, and Don's loyal friend, Curtis Mayfield.
It's down, baby, to the funky, funky, funky groove. Get down.
Curtis Mayfield was there every single time we ever asked him.
We're all children of the world, of all that. Get down.
Booking talent wasn't Don's only challenge that first season. Finding Superfly dancers in L.A. initially proved difficult, and he never would have found them without the help of an unlikely talent booker, an unassuming civil servant named Pam Brown.
I had worked at several recreation centers and knew a lot of young people in the age group that Don was looking for. Anything that has to do with youth in a positive manner, I'm on board.
And this lady took me by the hand and said, "No, I'm going to show you some dancers." When I first saw how the kids in L.A. danced, it was a little wild and crazy for me because I was from the cool school in Chicago.
He was saying California kids don't know how to dance. He was real cool with it.
They held the first auditions at one of the local L.A. rec centers where Pam worked. And overnight, Don had found his dancers.
All the killers was there. I mean, the killer dancers. Demita Joe Freeman and Patricia Davis and Don Campbell and Jimmy Scooby-Doo and Rerun. They were all at that first audition, and they were kicking legs and feet high and spinning, doing the splits and flipping. If you had given me a choice, I would have said to all of them, please don't dance like that. But the television audience disagreed.
The outrageous LA dancers were an instant hit with kids all across the country.
I remember me and my older cousins getting up in front of the television and trying to do the Funky Penguin.
This was your only source of what the latest dances were, so you pretty much had to use your memory to memorize everything, or else you had to wait an entire week and hope that they did that same move again.
What do you call it?
That was the PA Slaughter.
I wanted to make up a dance and let people know that I was from Philadelphia as well. The PA Slaughter, it was like, whoop, whoop, whoop.
The dancers, in my book, had to be one of the most important elements of that show.
Kids at home weren't just copying the dance moves. They were copying everything about the dancers.
That's what I think we really enjoyed about Soul Train, is like being able to pick up on the fashion, you know, how your after-school clothes gonna look, you know, you're like, this is what I got to have, you know, when school starts.
We all looked like Soul Train. We had dashikis and braids and bell-bottoms and afros and medallions and tikis, and we learned it all from watching it on Soul Train.
Without the dancers, the show might never have made it past the first season.
Those kids, they really made the show because in the beginning we just didn't have the big stars. They just were knocking everybody out across the country.
By the 5th episode, Don realized he had to capitalize on the dancers' exploding popularity, so he introduced a signature showcase for them.
Right now, we'd like to hit you to the Soul Train line. It gives everybody a chance to kind of style a while, and it's something you might want to get into on your own at parties or dances.
The Soul Train line was something that we used to do at parties in Chicago in the 50s and 60s probably, and I just borrowed it. It just caught on as the highlight of every Soul Train show.
It was the best part of the whole weekend, is going down the line.
And here we go with the Soul Train line, the Soul Train gang, Earth, Wind, and Fire, and Mighty, Mighty.
You never did know what those kids were going to do when they came down that line. You just knew the next one better be better than the last one.
It was very competitive, but in a positive way. We would all cheer each other on as we come down.
Soul Train line gave viewers a reason to crowd around the TV from week to week.
There's always that one person that had to let everybody know the segment before the Soul Train line came on. That was my job. You pretty much had to, Aunt Sharon, I'm by Soul Train line, I'm about to come on. It was like the ice cream man was coming.
One afternoon, Mary Wilson of the Supremes made her own mark on the line.
I wish I could join the Soul Train line. What, you think I could do that? Dance with Don?
That's it.
Dance with Don. That's the new thing. Okay, Don, can I dance with you?
Oh, yeah, you can dance with me.
She talked him into coming down the line with her.
You think I could come up that Soul Train line?
We were stunned, but we were elated at the same time, because this was actually the first time that any of the Soul Train gang got to see Don dance.
Growing up, I was never the worst dancer at the party. I was one of the guys who could throw down.
It's hard to dance and come down a line, to move in a forward fashion. You know, Don found that out. He said, cut. That's it, and he never tried it again.
By the end of its first season, Soul Train had found its groove. The show had expanded from 7 to 50 cities. Don Cornelius and Soul Train had arrived. Soul Train kicked off its second season with a bang. Don Cornelius landed Ike and Tina Turner for the August 1972 premiere. His days of struggling to book A-list talent were finally over. To come, Ike and Tina were followed by an impressive array of stars. Thanks in large part to the show's smallest but most influential fans.
It was the kids that watched the early syndicated versions of Soul Train. They would say to people like Aretha Franklin, "Mama, you seen that Soul Train show? How come you ain't on there?" I'm speechless. I can't tell you what a pleasure it is to have you here. I feel like I'm on top of the mountain.
Don't be. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
I understand that at your home in New York, you check us out once in a while, you and your family.
And not once in a while, all the time, every Saturday.
When Aretha appeared on Soul Train, she was at her peak, with 14 top 10 hits and 6 Grammys under her belt.
When you got the Soul Train, you had it going on. You knew that everyone was going to check your appearance because everybody watched Soul Train. So I couldn't wait to get the Soul Train.
From there, Stevie Wonder walked in the door. And when Stevie Wonder walked in the door, I said, uh-oh. We getting ready. We getting ready to go now.
At the same time, the Soul Train dancers were becoming stars in their own right, as well as rivals.
When you're on the outside looking in on the situation, everything seems like, everybody loves each other and they're all friends. And there was some of that, but there was a lot that it wasn't that at all.
The minute that camera came towards you and you saw that red light, somebody would jump in front of you, and then you try to go back and jump in front of them.
It was very competitive.
In order to make sure the camera was on them, they would use props. Some had a toothbrush or costumes. Costuming was big.
But dancing on TV wasn't always as glamorous and fun as it looked.
It was really a grueling shooting schedule.
They would tape the show 1 week in a month, 2 shows on Saturday and 2 on Sunday.
You would go all day long, and then they would give you a lunch break, and they would give you this cheap-ass 2-piece Kentucky Fried Chicken lunchbox.
We weren't being paid, so there was no guarantee for dancing on Soul Train. But the fact that you were being recognized, getting off and on buses and like, hey, that's that guy from Soul Train.
And I'm thinking to myself, you have no idea. I am a month behind on rent because I bought a suit to wear to Soul Train, and I want to ask you, can I borrow $25, but I'll sign your autograph.
Meanwhile, Don was getting more powerful than ever. And the man who had once gone door to door begging for talent was now overwhelmed by requests from the music industry's biggest players.
It became not an important promotional vehicle, the most important promotional vehicle.
It was important for our Motown acts to be on Soul Train because Soul Train was the show. It was hot.
Soul Train started giving us opportunity to be exposed
on a national basis.
The idea for black artists to have a television opportunity to reach a larger public was very, very important because Soul Train had a sizable white audience as well.
The show's expanding mainstream audience also caught the attention of rival TV producers. In just 2 seasons, the show was outrating American Bandstand in cities from Chicago to Memphis, and copycats were inevitable.
Hi, welcome to Soul Unlimited. Our special guests today are Ronnie Dyson, and Marlo's all set up and ready to go in a few minutes. We're going to go down on the floor with all the dancers and really get down.
In 1973, American Bandstand creator Dick Clark launched Soul Unlimited, a carbon copy that went right for Don's jugular. With the help of Jesse Jackson, Don went on the offensive, publicly accusing Clark of trying to undermine Hollywood's only black-owned TV program. The network heard the message loud and clear. Afraid of alienating the power brokers of black music, Dick Clark agreed to take Soul Unlimited off the air. Victory was sweet, but Don knew that the show needed to keep evolving or perish.
We just felt in order for us to survive, we had to do stuff that American Bandstand would not do.
Don raised the stakes by taking a huge risk. He made live music a centerpiece of the show.
When Soul Train first started, you would go on and you would lip sync to your record. But then it kind of opened up to the fact where you could go on and sing live.
Dance to the music. Dance to the music.
Playing live was a rare chance for the show's performers to really connect with viewers.
Something really exceptional was Sly on Soul Train. Oh, amazing.
It was easier to play live because we'd never practiced lip sync. And it was an honor to play live. On Soul Train, they were so used to hearing good music all the time anyway, so you really had to kind of entertain those people really hard.
Keeping the show on the cutting edge was costly.
We did Barry White with a 40-piece orchestra. That's what Barry White wanted, and Barry White was so hot at the time, it was like, we're not going to lose this booking.
When Barry White performed, it meant hiring extra crew, longer setup time, and building a special stage.
As far as the economics were concerned, as an owner, I kind of hated it.
Because of the financial and logistical headaches, the live performances were few and far between. Still, they were some of the show's most memorable moments. Like the time Al Green, Broken Arm and All, came on and blew everyone away.
Al Green was the bomb. Al Green would just come on Soul Train and rock it off of TV.
Al Green made a very big moment out of silence. He would hush the band. That silence was just as loud as him screaming.
But everybody aboard the Soul Train, I want you to get on board this evening.
These were the most exciting experiences I had. Not just my experience with the show, but in my entire life.
2 groundbreaking seasons on air, Soul Train was in a groove. It had built its own identity based on iconic elements like the Soul Train line and Sid McCoy's signature intro.
60 non-stop minutes across the tracks of your mind into the exciting world of soul.
Hey there, and welcome aboard. We'll definitely be dealing some good feeling your way for the next 60 minutes.
Don celebrated by commissioning a theme song fit for a hit TV show.
That first theme song called Hot Potatoes, it was real funky, but it was old, and I thought that we should have a new theme song.
Don called on his friends, Gamble and Huff, the genius producers behind the Philly sound of stars like Billy Paul and Teddy Pendergrass.
Started with Kenny Gamble singing something like, Soul Train, Soul Train, but he did it in key.
We knew it had to be something that people could dance to. We had to be able to do the Soul Train line on it.
That song, I mean, it just stays with you, and seeing that little train going around and dancing, the dancing train.
The track was so hot, Gamble and Huff wanted to release it immediately.
And I said, okay. I said, but I don't want you to call it Soul Train. I want you to call it something else, because I was very protective of the Soul Train trademark.
They retitled the song The Sound of Philadelphia, and it was an instant smash, selling over 1 million copies and hitting #1 on the Billboard chart in April 1974.
That was the dumbest move I ever made. It should have been named Soul Train, and it wasn't.
But outside the beautiful, groovy world of Soul Train, 70s America was in turmoil. The battle over school desegregation was raging.
Why should they come over here and wreck the city? Why should they take over that school?
And black soldiers were returning from Vietnam only to find inner city poverty on the rise and few, if any, job opportunities.
I am somebody.
Against that backdrop, Soul Train became much more than just a Saturday morning diversion.
I think Soul Train had a way of bonding the community. That was one time that you knew that all the black America was at home watching TV when Soul Train was on.
Young black political leaders also knew America was watching.
Jesse, welcome.
Good to be here, Brother Don.
We were all trying to say something, do something, tell some story, and there was no greater platform for young America than Soul Train.
We were always brought up talking about we needed the 3 R's, reading and writing and arithmetic. But now we're moving into another era where we need the 3 E's, ethnic, being ethical, and being excellent.
Don realized the power of his reach and found creative ways to incorporate black pride into the show's weekly segments.
Okay, we'd like you to meet 2 members of our Soul Train gang.
Renee White.
Hi, Renee.
Darnell Williams.
And Darnell, you're both, I'm sure, familiar with the Soul Train Scramble Board, right?
The Scramble Board challenged contestants to spell the names of legendary black icons.
There were political figures like Julian Bond and Phyllis Wheatley and Harriet Tubman.
I always thought that was fixed, though, because you could never find one episode where a couple didn't figure it out.
Actually, the board was fixed. Sort of.
It was impossible not to win on the Scramble Board, which is a little-known fact, because we were into projecting positive images of black people. And so we couldn't have them stand there misspelling Stevie Wonder's name.
The positive images didn't stop there. Don's revolutionary sponsorship deal with black-owned Johnson products finally gave Soul Train viewers TV ads they could actually relate to.
I'd like to ask you specifically why you felt it was important to sponsor a show like Soul Train.
I think Soul Train is the right show for our company because it reaches our market directly.
Hey, now, mama.
Some of the early commercials were just awe-inspiring to our audience and a definite first.
Tally ho!
You just did not see commercials that were directed toward African Americans back in the 1970s.
Here it comes.
And me with the most untogether natural in town.
They were speaking to me.
But you need this Afro Sheen hairspray to give your hair sparkle.
That smells nice too.
The voiceover sounded like an African-American voice.
When fox hunting, be sure you're ready with Afro Sheen.
It was amazing. These products were just reinforcing the idea that black is beautiful.
Makita, serene, majestic, beautiful Queen of Sheba. And now, out of the mist of 3,000 years, emerges today's beautiful black queen. Naturally beautiful, radiant. She is black essence.
There was a real sense that the Afro was a radical statement, particularly for women. Women still wore straightened processed hair most of the time. So for a woman to have a natural, whether it was short or long, was a remarkable political statement about acceptance, about black beauty.
Probably the best Afro Sheen commercial I've ever seen. It has to be seen to be believed.
Haven't you forgotten something?
Say who were... Hey, aren't you Frederick Douglass? Yeah, we studied about you in school yesterday. About how you were a slave and how you took your own freedom. And then began to fight for freedom and dignity for all our people. Say, but what did I forget?
Are you gonna go out into the world with your hair looking like that?
The ghost of Frederick Douglass basically tells him his fro's not tight.
That's a mess. I've been watching the progress of our people, and I'm quite familiar with the natural. And I'm also aware that it is worn as an outward expression of pride and dignity.
Believe it or not, I still use Afro Sheen. Frederick Douglass only has to tell me once.
Soul Train was also breaking new ground behind the scenes.
You'd go to Soul Train and you'd see black people on the floor, PAs, and black floor managers and black directors. You didn't see that anywhere else.
I remember my first meeting with James Brown. He was from an era where you couldn't do anything big unless you had somebody, probably somebody white, backing you. He was so impressed as he looked around the studio. He said, "Brother, who's backing you on this?" And I said, "Well, James, it's just me." And then he'd pass by me again and say, "Brother, who you with on this?" I wanted to say, "You just asked me that," but out of respect, I would say, "James, it's just me." And then came to me and he said, "Brother, who's really behind this?" And I said, "James, it's just me."
By the end of its watershed third season, Soul Train had matured from a wild experiment to a thriving business, making Don one of the most influential black men in America.
And that ought to do it for you. We thank you so much for joining us.
And a role model for generations of African-American entrepreneurs to come.
I was one of the first African-American guys to put their name on the credits of a television show as executive producer.
This has been a Don Cornelius production.
He was way ahead of his time in terms of the business of show business. I need to take classes from Don Cornelius.
By 1975, black pop culture was booming. From the superfly style of blaxploitation flicks to the crossover success of TV sitcoms like Good Times and The Jeffersons, to the dominance of soul music on the record charts. Being black in America had never been so cool. And everyone wanted in on the action.
A great welcome, gang, please, for Mr. Gino Vanelli.
For me, it wasn't a cultural phenomenon or anything like that. And they said, "You'll be the first white guy on the show." And I said, "Well, okay, I'll do it." Yeah. You know, the conversation with Don was very amicable. I asked him, "Why did you invite me on the show?" You know, I mean, I'm obviously not a black artist. And he said, "Well," he says, "I consider you off-white."
The reason why Gino Vanelli happened to be on Soul Train, number one, is because he had a black sound. People thought the man was black. I am one of them.
But it was a life-turning, or at least a career-turning event for me. Because right after Soul Train, my audiences were at least 50% black.
Ushered in another kind of growth period when major white stars wanted to come on the Soul Train show.
I understand that you've been quite a fan of these kids for some time, is that right?
It's the only thing that you can look forward to on a tour, apart from the sports programs on American television. I just watch it every week, and the whole band watches it, and it keeps us amused. It's great. We've been watching it for a long time.
Wasn't salesmanship on our part. They just called up one day and said, Elton John wants to do Soul Train, and we like, fine, you know.
Elton John, David Bowie made music that if you didn't know who they were, you would have thought a black man made them records. That song, Fame.
You were just shocked when he was on Soul Train. I remember when we all were jockeying, positioned to be in front of the television. And when he came on, oh my gosh, it was mesmerizing, it really was.
I think they'd had quite a success with Elton John. I think they probably felt that it was opening their market up a bit to try and cross over into white territories as well. The great trouble was that I forgot to learn to lip sync it, and it was a farce. I mean, I barely get through the song. I was frantically trying to remember the words as the thing's playing. Oh God, I should have learned this.
Don went on to feature an array of white soul performers, from Tina Marie to Captain and Tennille to the appropriately named Scottish funk group, the Average White Band.
Soul Train was our first performance to Greater America. And obviously that had an immediate impact on ticket sales. The venues were changing suddenly. We're going upstairs to the big hall.
Even the unpaid Soul Train dancers began to find opportunities outside the show. Like Fred Berry, who went on to star as Rerun on What's Happening, while also grooving with the Lockers, a group of Soul Train dancers who toured the country showcasing their synchronized street moves and outrageous outfits.
Don Campbell was the inventor of the dance called locking. It's just the locking of the joints. It's like you move and you lock. Lock, lock,
That dance actually served as the original format of how we as breakdancers, we formatted our routines. Those dances set the trend for the hip-hop dances to come.
Soul Train gave birth to a lot of dances that are popularized even to this day. Popping, ticking, whacking, robot. All of this stuff came from Soul Train.
The robot had always been one of the show's most unique dances, but its popularity skyrocketed when one of the biggest stars picked up on it.
I do remember the day that Michael Jackson premiered the robot on Soul Train. All my cousins seen it, and then they just instantly, you just had to do the robot.
That whole style of dance influenced Michael. He was so in tune and informed by what was happening on Soul Train.
In its 4 years on air, Soul Train had become more than just a cultural phenomenon. It was a lifestyle, a tight-knit community that everyone wanted to be a part of, even the greatest musicians of all time.
Soul Train went down Cornelia.
Stevie Wonder made his own song up on the spot about the Soul Train gang.
Soul Train.
And he got us to sing in with him. It was an exciting moment for me.
And let me hear everybody say, well, all the brothers and sisters get together, say louder. Hey, 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 clap a little louder, people.
Soul Train, show number 154, VTR 92075.
By the mid-'70s, Don Cornelius, the kid from Chicago who once dreamed of putting black music on TV, had become a Hollywood heavyweight.
Welcome. Do you think that the feeling about music is changing?
I think it's at a height where it is being enjoyed by probably more people than ever before.
Don was enjoying life, even breaking into a Soul Train episode to play a game of basketball with a new pal.
Marvin Gaye and I were really good friends.
They cleared the entire studio, and Marvin and Don played one-on-one with Smokey Robinson refereeing.
Both of them thought they could hoop, but I could have beat both of them by myself.
Don might have been on top of his game that day. But off camera, a new threat was blowing in from the East Coast.
Disco came in so strong, it was almost intimidating.
There was certainly a move in the late 1970s toward more entertainment hedonism. There was a lot of, youthful drug use, a lot of cocaine, and disco was associated with a lot of that.
Don felt the repetitious dance beats lacked musicianship and soul.
It's a big difference between funky music and disco music.
When disco evolved, we didn't know what to do.
As the unstoppable force of disco spawned rival shows such as Disco 77 and Disco Magic, Don stood at a crossroads. Remain an arbiter of soul or cede to the disco craze.
We came to realize that the best disco records almost invariably were black records. So we made a commitment to just play the best black records we could find. Now, if you want to call it disco, fine.
A lot of people feel as though, that was the period that sort of took the soul out of it.
Things began to change. You all of a sudden saw this disco, Studio 54, almost New York vibe, find its place into Soul Train.
He took the sign away, and it was replaced with the crystal ball. Thank God that only lasted for one season.
Don might not have been a fan of disco, but he made it work to his advantage when he started his own music label, Soul Train Records. The first act he assembled was a disco group, and he turned to the Soul Train dancers for talent.
Remember, I was at Jody's house, and we got a call, and it was Don Cornelius. He says, I have a new project that I want you to do. I said, really?
Don picked Jeffrey Daniel and Jody Watley, the show's standout fan favorites, and Shalimar was born.
We were the most popular dancers on the show.
Jody and I just had a natural chemistry. We could just read each other, and that just comes from a real partnership.
Let's welcome three very talented people, ironically, all of whom were connected with Soul Train in one way or another before they became, shall we say, stars. Namely, they are Jody Watley, Jeffrey Daniels, and Howard Hewitt, better known as Shalimar.
Shalimar was promoted
by Don. They were on Soul Train a lot.
I know you come a long way, baby, but you don't need that heart of stone, no. You prove that you can do it, baby.
When the rumor was that they were looking to get dancers to be in the Shalimar group, well, they better not pick so-and-so, and why did they pick her, and why did they pick him? The first time we did Soul Train as Shalimar, I remember just bawling in the dressing room. I was crying because there was kind of a bitter intensity. We're getting the evil eye, like, you know,
Don's strategy eventually paid off, and the second time around hit #1 on the Billboard R&B charts.
We really thank you, so we would like to present you with a gold 45.
When Shalimar's not on the road, I'd sneak back on the Soul Train. It was my love, so I would still go down there and dance. And thank God I did.
Building on the locking style of the mid-'70s, the Soul Train dancers pioneered another groundbreaking art form.
Popping is the popping of the joints. It's boom, bang, pop, pop, pop.
And in November '79, Jeffrey Daniel debuted a move that would become one of the most popular moves in dance.
From popping came the backslide. Later picked the moonwalk. That's the first time that the nation just saw it. It was just like, bam. Michael Jackson saw this dance and he thought it was amazing and he wanted to learn it. And so we all showed Michael how to do the moonwalk.
By the end of the '70s, the combination of popping, disco, and Don's growing legend made Soul Train soar to its highest ratings ever.
Disco helped promote Soul Train, no doubt about it.
While Don had successfully navigated the treacherous waters of the disco era, another movement was lurking in the shadows. It would challenge the very foundations of R&B and make the '80s a battleground for the soul of Soul Train. Where the '70s were all about us, 1980 ushered in a decade of me. Across America, blacks as well as whites were flashing their status symbols in expensive taste.
There's been so many things that's held us down, but now it looks like things are finally coming around.
McFadden and Whitehead's Ain't No Stopping Us Now is really an anthem of upward mobility.
Black people are moving up into the middle class. Like, you know, there's no stopping us now. We're on the move. We're going to make this happen. We're going forward. We're not going backwards anymore.
Beneath the surface, a different story was unfolding. And in the inner city, life was tougher than ever.
The conditions under which many African Americans in cities were living were pretty desperate.
Automatic weapons and highly profitable drug trades and 40, 50, 60% unemployment produces a whole nother level of really troubled urban communities.
And so hip-hop really emerges at this moment of loss and disappointment, but also with a real sensibility that it's important to depict what's going on.
Hip-hop took Soul Train by surprise because we thought it was something that might not stick.
Don objected to rap's bleak outlook, but reluctantly invited chart-topping rappers onto the show.
Broken glass everywhere. People on the stage, you know they just don't care. I can't take the smell, can't take the noise. Got no money to move out, I guess I got no choice.
You know, I can understand Don Cornelius and the Soul Train being a little skeptical or nervous about hip-hop because it was a very brash new thing.
Don't push me, cause I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head.
When the message came out, the Furious Five wanted to wake up America and just talk about the things that were going wrong that people sometimes don't want to hear.
Why didn't people like hip-hop at first? What was to like? The profanity, the perceived disrespect for elders. It was the rebel music.
Just the idea that someone just speaks over beat and they get to be on TV. It was something that a lot of the adults in black pop culture weren't interested in.
Don gave his audience what they wanted, though he still chafed at the racy East Coast dance moves.
Don Cornelius did not want to see how I really danced. I was doing hip hop, and it was foreign to people out in California. Don was like, oh, no, you're a girl. And I'm like, what?
He also made uncharacteristically blunt comments about the music.
I mean, it doesn't make sense to old guys like me. I mean, I don't understand why they love it so much.
Never in my wildest imagination did I ever think that Don Cornelius would say what he said. My heart dropped to my feet. It devastated me.
But that ain't my job, is it? My job is to deal with it.
I remember being offended by, here's a guy whose job it is to like everything that's hot, and he couldn't relate to it. That was kind of the epitome of what the whole industry felt about hip-hop. Here's this emerging art form that no one can understand or like, but yet somehow it's selling.
But as the 80s progressed and rap became more and more popular, Don learned to live with.
That was frightening.
If not exactly love, the new art form.
I bought it for Public Enemy.
At a certain point, hip-hop records and even the hardcore hip-hop records had just established themselves as so central to black pop music that Soul Train couldn't ignore that.
People look at you funny if you are not booking these kind of artists because it's like you don't know what you're doing.
I could tell that Don was a little uncomfortable embracing it, but as a businessman, I'm glad he was smart enough to give in.
Don's eventual acceptance of hip-hop helped launch the genre into the mainstream and gave acts like Run DMC, Slick Rick and Dougie Fresh, and Eric B. and Rakim national TV exposure for the first time.
The stage is empty. A beat like this might tempt me to pose, show my rings and my fat gold chain. Grab the mic like I'm on Soul Train, but I won't.
When Soul Train gave the hip-hop community a look, as far as letting them come on and perform their songs, that broke hip-hop.
It took it out of New York and brought it into the homes of people across the country. Yo, TV, brand.
But Don would soon face some serious competition.
Yo, welcome to the premiere of Yo MTV Raps.
Yo MTV Raps was another new thing where I'm running around on the street. So it was a whole different format to the show.
When BET and MTV came around, Soul Train didn't have a monopoly on that audience anymore.
It is much more difficult when these upstarts come around and they're able to be newer and edgier and completely define themselves from zero instead of define themselves within their own history.
While the late 80s were all about upheaval for Soul Train, through it all, Don remained on top. The show now aired in more cities and reached more fans than ever before. But as he revealed in a 1993 news interview, the times were changing faster than he was.
People want to see people who are more like them, who relate better and more closely. I could do it, you know. I could be like, yo, what's up and all that, but I would look stupid.
In a manner befitting an icon, he decided to step down while he was still on top. After more than 2 decades of keeping Soul Train on track, Don Cornelius signed off for good on May 10, 1993.
And you can bet your last money it's all going to be a stone gas, honey. I'm Don Cornelius, and as always in parting, we wish you love, peace, and...
While it was the end of one era, it was also the beginning of another. Could Soul Train survive without Don Cornelius?
Your host, Shamar Moore.
Thank you. Now I want to welcome you aboard the funkiest train ride you will ever be a part of.
Soul Train, Shamar Moore style.
Shamar brought his own style to the train, one a bit different than Don's.
No disrespect, but every other host of Soul Train pales in comparison because there's no cool like Don Cornelius cool.
Still, Soul Train lasted 13 more years, breaking new artists and staying influential, even without the soothing baritone of Don Cornelius.
Even when the competitors came in, the brand Soul Train is one of the greatest brands in the culture. You say Soul Train, you think Afro, you think dance moves, you think love, peace, and soul. That's a brand that succeeded.
In 2006, Soul Train left the station for the very last time. It had been on the air for a staggering 35 seasons, a feat that at the time made Don's Labor of Love the longest-running syndicated series ever.
35 years and having the longest-running syndication in the history of TV is incredible, and we should pay homage to that.
Don's legacy is the tapestry of mediums and platforms by which we can see black music now.
His legacy, for me, is my hero. His legacy as a man who created a show that had never been seen before is legendary.
So many people owe their careers. Me, I'm one of them, to Soul Train.
It changed my life because it got me out of my shell. It dared me to be great.
Check this out. For Don Cornelius to give us a chance to come and dance every Saturday and have people around the world watching that, that's something I will always cherish because it was a spectacular time in my life.
I had a pretty tumultuous childhood growing up, but Soul Train was the one thing I had to look forward to. It was glamorous, and I got to meet people and finally have a group of people that I felt like I belonged to. It saved me.
Soul Train was the thread that connected new stars with the legends of the past.
It's inspired, generations of performers. All my recollection goes back to seeing everyone from Marvin Gaye to Al Green on Soul Train. So that's kind of the blueprint of how to do it today.
The first time I did Soul Train, I stayed in the green room for about an hour and a half doing what I do, you understand me? It's like I'm here, I made it, you know what I'm saying? Because to me, I could say that I was with James Brown and, the Dramatics, and Stevie Wonder and Curtis Mayfield, Marvin Gaye. I was on that level.
It's the bound to the wild, creeping and crawling, Yiggy yes and Snoop Doggy Dogg in the house.
When it came on, I watched it over and over again. I watched this more than any video I had ever been in because I felt like I was gonna make it. I felt like that was the only stamp I was missing. Good looking out, Don, Soul Train. Appreciate y'all. I ain't looked back ever since.
In the end, Soul Train was more than just a TV show. It was a source of pride that influenced fashion, music, and dance. It was a celebration of life that changed the world around it forever.
If you go to any black wedding reception, there's going to be a Soul Train line still. That's going to be forever now.
You call out Soul Train line, and everybody knows exactly what to do. Whether they are 7 or 70, you fall right into place.
The Soul Train line, we do it at every holiday party. It's a part of our culture.
Any African-American gathering, it was official. You had to close it out. It was like a prayer and then the Soul Train line. You got to give it up to Jesus and then Don Cornelius.
I'm Don Cornelius, and as always in party,
I'm wishing you
love,
peace,
and